Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's UM Michigan Engineering Online Professional Education, Leadership, and Innovation webinar series. My name is Dejanae Beaver, and I am a program manager for Michigan Engineering Online and Professional Education. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. You are welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation by putting them in chat or raising your hand via Zoom. There will also be a dedicated question and answer period following the presentation. And now it's time to welcome today's speaker, Lisa Thie. Lisa Thie is a renowned thought leader and expert in the fields of artificial intelligence, career transformation, and ethical technology. With over 2 decades of experience, Lisa has dedicated her career to driving innovation and empowering individuals and organizations to thrive in an ever-changing world. Lisa's passion for harnessing the potential of AI to create positive change led her to become a sought-after international keynote speaker, inspiring audiences around the globe with their insights and vision. She has been honored with numerous awards, including the 2023 International Impact Book Award for her groundbreaking book, Go Reboot Your Career in 90 Days, 2023 Go Vidi Award for a long-form series, Navigating Abroad, and she is a Gold Award winner for the 2023 Executive of the Year Stevie Awards for Women in Business for her AI ethics consulting firm. As the CEO and co-founder of MinerGuard, an AI software company dedicated to online safety, Lisa combines her technical expertise with a commitment to ethical AI practices. She is also known for her work with leading healthcare and technology organizations, including Microsoft and UCSF's Center for Digital Healthcare Innovation. Lisa's TEDx talk, Bringing Light to Dark Places Online, Disrupting Human Trafficking Using AI, exemplifies her dedication to using technology for social good. She is a respected advisory board member and board director for organizations at the forefront of technology, ethics, and human rights. Connect with Lisa and discover more about her work, insights, and transformation made of ideas. Join her on a journey of empowerment, innovation, and ethical leadership. And now I'll turn it over to you, Lisa. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that gracious introduction. And you've reminded me that I've got to get a much shorter bio. That is like a mouthful. So thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome today. I'm so glad to be here. As an alumni of U of M Engineering, it's such a pleasure to return to my roots and share some of the experiences I've had since I've left campus with all of you. I'm really looking forward to making today interactive. My goal is to really inspire you to think a little bit differently than maybe what you have before in terms of your agility in your career. I know that when I grew up in Michigan, dating myself, it felt like you went to U of M, got an engineering degree, went and worked for the auto industry, and then that's where you sat until you got your gold watch in retirement. And I think those days have definitely passed us. We're in a much more agile environment. And as I've learned through a 20-year career in corporate America, which translated into entrepreneurship, which translated into management consulting. We all have the ability to learn, adapt, and grow. And I want to share some of those key insights with you all today. So let's get into it. Seeing if I can get my slides to advance. There we go. So from a little bit of background, my background is actually industrial and operations research engineering. I graduated in the end of '99, right into the heart of the dot-com bust in Silicon Valley. So it was an interesting time to join the workforce. Feels a little bit familiar to what we're seeing today. From a responsible AI perspective, I really like to focus on the areas of advocacy and innovation. So I founded the AI for Good team at Intel Corporation back in 2015, and I led that for a couple of years, where we worked with leading nonprofits to be able to disrupt the crimes of human trafficking and the child sexual abuse material epidemic we have online. As mentioned in my CEO, I've had some experience leading a consulting firm now, and prior to that, I sold my software company to a company called Bark Technologies and have had an exit that way. From an author's journey perspective, you can check out my book Fast Company from Fast Company called Go Reboot Your Career in 90 Days, which is the basis for a lot of the content that we're going to show here today. So if you find some things that you feel inspiring to you, you can grab a copy of that and deep dive a little bit further. It goes down into a pretty prescriptive recipe on how to make these transformations for yourself. So I want to start a little bit with what we're seeing in terms of future of work trends. I've had the honor of hosting the main stage for the World AI Festival in Cannes, France, the last 3 years. And one of the themes that keeps coming up is that we are at an inflection point for the transformation of how technology is going to innovate the workplace. So the same way that computers came into the workplace in large volumes in the 80s, and it became really important to be computer literate, we're now in the data literacy age. It's going to be critical to business successes that people are literate in data and know how to work with it in order to have more insightful connections with their customers and their potential, and are able to keep their products and services relevant in the market. We recognize that's going to require reskilling more frequently than what traditionally has happened in terms of getting an area of expertise, becoming a subject matter expert, and then wash, rinse, repeat. You're going to start to see some of the tasks that humans do moving to machines, and it's going to require people to be adaptive to come along with the changes in the workplace. Subject matter experts are going to be required to adapt to generative AI, but they are not going to be unnecessary in the workplace. I think it's been very consistent now that what we see is the jobs of the future are going to evolve, but they're not going to vanish. And we see a lot of applications for more human in the loop types of applications with AI. So subject matter experts are going to be critical as some of these models are moving out of the innovation and technology groups as little pilots and actually into the business units and the support services like HR and legal and IT. You're going to need the people that know how to do these things manually so that we can adapt those models to the right business climates and make them actually give us results that are benefiting the users, the customers, and making sure people have more of a frictionless experience. I think we've seen a lot of that transformation in the retail sector or in places like social media, for example, but we're going to start to see them more in the types of industries that maybe don't adopt first in the innovator market. Things like public sector, education, we've seen some disruption there, manufacturing, and even in regulated industries like healthcare. We're still going to have to deal with the legacy issues that we've had of dealing with data, which are the things like cybersecurity, online safety, mis and disinformation. But it's going to be even more critical as deepfakes are scaling. It takes a lot less talent and a lot less investment to be able to spread fake information, as we all may have seen in some of the news stories around how information is getting out that's tipping democracies and things like that. Geopolitical issues are going to continue to stall some effective regulatory frameworks. I think in 2024, we've seen many different countries come up with some different regulatory frameworks, and we've seen some progress there. However, getting to a cohesive global standard is probably going to continue to be a challenge. And I think it's also going to start to affect academia as we have to think about some of these geopolitical issues that have not been as much of a focus in the prior years. And last but not least, AI will disrupt the workplace as we have known it. So the reason that's going to happen is because we've entered this data age, and it's making business acumen indispensable. So 90% of all data that was created that exists in the cloud has been created in the last 2 years. So by 2025, we will be creating 463 million terabytes of data every single day. When you think about the vastness of that, that is beyond the comprehension of humans to be able to ingest and get meaningful information out of. And so, especially because 80% of this data is going to be unstructured, it's going to really require robust data platforms and automation to be able to make meaningful sense out of it. And it is also estimated that 50% of the workforce will require upskilling to be able to adapt to these changes by 2025. I do want to reassure everyone that AI is not going to replace the need for human subject matter experts in the foreseeable future. This is not everybody's going to be put out to pasture and we're all going to live in, Skynet days. But I do want to encourage people to recognize that a less experienced employee with knowledge on how to use the modern AI tools will likely outperform in the workplace from the tenured subject matter experts who don't know how to leverage these digital assistants to accelerate their workflows. And an example of that is one of the shows that I host, and I wanted to just give you an anecdotal example so that you can kind of wrap your mind around this scale. So we've been creating a web series for the last few years. We have a production team. It's very small. One producer, 2 camera people, and a back office of an audio editor and somebody that's editing the videos, getting the social media up, and promoting that on LinkedIn. When we do those recordings, historically every episode that we record has been about 20 minutes long. And once we record, it historically takes about a week, 5 business days to be able to edit and get that up for promotion. Leveraging some of the tools that are available with AI in terms of being able to use it for audio mixing, being able to use it for script writing, being able to use it for social media posts, and leveraging it for integrating all the different camera angles at the right times for the editing. We were able to go from a 5-day turnaround per episode down to a 2-day turnaround. And that was this year that we actually, in 2023, that we actually won a global award for that series. So it certainly did not compromise the quality of the production, because really where we're gleaning the value is having those international AI experts from places like UNESCO and Meta Research and all the interesting people, these great startup entrepreneurs that we're interviewing. The important part is sharing their message. It isn't in the details of whether automation mixed the audio or a human did. So I want to give that example to show you just a way that if you're looking at a business, it makes sense to integrate some of these tools in. You're not eliminating your team, you're making them more productive. So a quote from the Chief Strategy Officer at Launch Consulting, Russ Whitman, is that AI is going to be used to deliver more personalized solutions for customers and employees, and we're going to start seeing those big leaps forward rather than some of the incremental changes we've seen for companies historically. I'm going to now tip us into the topic that we talked about for this course, which is really career agility. So career agility for engineers in this age is the ability to be able to swiftly adapt and excel in this rapidly evolving landscape, shaped by artificial intelligence. So it's going to include things like being a lifelong learner, having versatility and adaptability in when and how you do your work, looking at it more from an entrepreneurial mindset, less of a employee of a company and more of a, if I was the business owner, where can I get the best return on investment for investing in new technologies and the ways I do business? And last but not least, some career management of your own. So that's a lot of extra work and not in the muscle memory for a lot of people. So I will lead next with, why is that good for you? Because I always like to know what's in it for me when I want to accelerate change in my life. This really empowers you to adapt and change. It allows you to embrace learning and innovation and navigate your professional journey with more resilience and purpose. So it's really around increasing your opportunities, embracing innovation, focusing on better work-life integration in a lot of cases, and career advancement for being able to do the right things at the right times in those moments that matter. So how did we do it? If you're anything like me, when I was 18 years into my career working in corporate America as a director of a $6 billion P&L and hybrid cloud and working with global customers, it felt like from the moment I woke up to the moment my head hit the pillow in the evening, I was on a treadmill that was going really, really quickly. And if I didn't keep up with just the things that I needed to do for survival mode, it was all going to be problematic. So I created the 90-day career cleanse process more for myself than anything back in 2017. And I used it as a framework to pivot my career from being driven by the needs and demands of my employer to aligning it better with where my superpowers are and where my strengths are, to be spending a lot more time in the places that energize me than the places that drain me. That led me to entrepreneurship and launching my own company. I certainly grew the most that year. I like to call it my favorite street MBA. I learned as much in that year of getting a business off the ground as I did probably in my 4 years of engineering school, including things like how do you do disclosures to the SEC for making sure that you had appropriate investors, and how do you pick a platform that everybody's going to work from. I always had a corporate IT department to dictate what platforms we'd be working from, or things like that. So in order for me to get to a place where I could really focus in on what I wanted to do and where I was going to be, I recognized it was really, really important to slow down and be able to tap back into my inner wisdom. So month one is really around stabilizing. It's about getting out of your head and back into your body so that you can hear the signals that your body is telling you about what works for you and does not work for you uniquely. I think it's really easy in environments where things are changing rapidly to feel this urgency and the sense of need to adapt instantly. But what can happen in those places is if you don't know who you are and what you need and where you want to be going for not just the next job, but the next 2 or 3 jobs, you're going to be always chasing someone else's definition of success. You're not going to be chasing your own. And so it's really important to slow down, to be able to spend the time to get really clear on what you envision for the future that can really excite you. And then getting it down on paper and planning. At the end of the day, I am an IOE at heart. We have to have a process here. And what I hope you'll see here is a repeatable process that you can follow. I also want to share with you that when I wrote this, I was in the process of doing another 90-day career cleanse. These aren't one and dones. We're all going to have things that change in life. For me, it was a diagnosis with a rare illness that severely restricted the amount of time that I could work. And so it really was one of those urgent situations where it was not possible for me to stay as the managing director of AI for a global consulting firm when I could only work 40 hours a month. That wasn't going to be a good fit any longer. I would have never believed you that that's a choice that I'd be having to make in my 40s. But as we all know, with the pandemic we all lived through things that we never envisioned coming. So I dusted off this framework that worked really well for me in 2017, and that I used to executive coach multiple senior level executives out of careers that were draining them, causing health issues, blood pressure problems, a lot of stress, panic attacks, into things that were more sustainable and a better fit for them long term. So what does month one look like? From a career cleanse standpoint, I really want people to start thinking like a little bit like computers, believe it or not. I learned this from my AI. It's really important to collect data on yourself in order to be able to start seeing where are the places that you need to double down and where are the places that you need to pull back. And so I really encourage people to think through creating an energy log for themselves. And it's usually, at least a week-long activity. You can extend it beyond depending on your tolerance for the attention to detail and the amount of patience that you have. But what I find is even just looking at a week, you can start to get some surprising insights about, different types of environments that you enter into and out of and how you react to them. And we'll go a little bit into more detail on the next slide on that. Week 2 is very simple. You're going to continue that energy logging, but you're going to add in daily walks without looking at your phone. I think sometimes it's really important to be able to take in some fresh air and a little bit of a nature bath to remind yourself that the skies are still blue, the tops of the trees are still there. You had nothing to do with making the earth rotate, and it still works. The birds aren't waiting for you to chirp. And we are not responsible for all of the challenges that we see in the workplace and in the world. And And it's also important to remember that, you have one go at this and one life, and what do you want it to look like? And I think some of the ways that you get there is getting out of that survival mode and back into your body and really experiencing your own reality. Week 3, I added in meditation here. I must admit, I was pretty reluctant to join meditation. Anybody that knows me and tolerates me knows me as a pretty type A type of person. I don't like to sit and be quiet in the corner very often, but I think it's really important to be able to help improve self-regulation and reflection. And so that really helps as you're making these big transitions and weighing these big decisions. I like to use a meditation app. I enjoy having some guidance. So for me, Headspace works really well. There's a lot of options on the market there. I've also explored things like breath work or yoga practices. You can always adjust this for who you are and what works best for you. But the importance is getting out, getting some fresh air in week 2, and then adding some introspection in week 3. And then week 4, you're going to see a term that may sound a little bit funny to people, but it's inspired by a book. And that is Identify a Unicorn Space. And the book that I reference for that is Finding Your Unicorn Space from a fellow University of Michigan alumni, Eve Rodsky. And she talks about the importance of finding joy and play back in your life in order to be able to access your creativity and to be in a place where you can thrive long term. So if you're anything like me, I was pretty good at joy and play until, the responsibilities of marriage and parenting and caring for grandparents all came onto the plate. And so those were the places that I made some of the trade-offs and that weren't available any longer. And it's really important to reconnect with something that brings you joy just for the experience of it. All of your innovation, your creativity is going to come in those hours where you're off the clock and not thinking. Those big ideas come when you least expect it. I think we can all remember those moments where you're standing in the shower and an aha moment comes. You're not thinking about your topic. It comes to you when you're in your most relaxed places. So some of the clients that I've worked with have reconnected with things like hobbies they had when they were children. One decided that I was working with was a recent widow. He had 4 children at home. He had always had a stay-at-home spouse. So being the chief data scientist of a global tech company worked really great for him until he was a single parent with 4 boys at home. The hours and the responsibilities did not align. He was starting to have blood pressure issues and panic attacks, but he also had the responsibility of those 4 boys going to college within one was already there and 3 others were about to follow. So financially, he knew he was going to have to continue to bring in the levels of income that he brought in a high cost of living area. The place where we got to with him for his unicorn space was he really enjoyed playing music. So he picked back up the guitar, and lo and behold, all of his boys decided to pick up their old instruments, and they started a family band. And they didn't do it for an audience. They did it in their living room, and it gave them a way to reconnect as a family. Other experiences I've seen are a person I worked with was a single parent of 2 elementary school age children. She was working for a global consulting firm. 16-hour days were not unusual. She was managing delivery for them. It was not uncommon to have holidays interrupted, all the things. And with that, a unicorn space sounded like madness to her. In fact, when her financial advisor asked her what her hobbies were, she struggled to even say a single one and settled on collecting garden gnomes. Yikes, right? That's the only thing that she could come up with as a hobby. And so we really dive down in this space, and it feels counterintuitive, right? You're trying to get from where you are today to where you want to be. Why would I take time out to play? Well, she reconnected with a childhood passion of horseback riding, and she was able to start getting time at the barn, riding in the fresh air. And lo and behold, it really opened her up to her humanity and new choices. And what she was able to do was find a comparable job in a tech company doing really pretty similar work. She used to be on the consulting side. Now she's on the Salesforce side, doing the implementations. And her hours went from 16 hours a day to 8 hours a day. And she has playback in her life. And spoiler alert, she makes more doing it there. But when we started, that seemed completely impossible. So I just want you to connect with some of these stories to recognize it doesn't matter where you are today. You can get where you want to be and start living a life that aligns with how you want to feel. I'm not going to say it's easy. These changes take time, but that's why we have a 90-day process to help you have a structure for starting to introduce these things slowly. So the first thing we talked about was energy logging, and I wanted to give you some examples or some prompts to help you think through some of that. In order to start slowing down and not just keep pushing through those days in survival mode, I think the first step is really awareness of how much energy you're expending just trying to make it through your day and your commitments. So it only takes about 5 minutes to create a data log of how your energy is ebbing and flowing as the day goes on. And you move through those tasks. So, I recommend maybe taking a couple of minutes at lunchtime to jot down some notes and maybe another couple minutes before bedtime. And we're going to continue to take these logs and revisit them later in this process. So it is important that you get at least a couple of weeks worth of information in there. But some prompts for you to kind of reflect on things like, do you find the interaction with groups of people draining or energizing? Is there a meeting that you dread or look forward to every week? Are you feeling like your interactions need to speed up? You're always trying to get people to keep going faster, or do they need to slow down? Is there an age group you like collaborating with more than others? Do you enjoy being more the visionary in the group or more of the execution arm as an operational leader? What makes your heart race just a bit faster in anticipation? What makes you want to crawl back into bed and just not even show up to the meeting that day? When do you have more access to your creativity? Is it in the morning? Is it in the evening? And what times did outside distractions take you completely off task of what you were intending to do? So some of the aha moments that I had when I started collecting this information on myself were things like, sitting in a meeting with over 20 people is exhausting to me. It seems like my mind would always drift, and it always felt like it was much more about performative power and control versus solving the actual problem when I was sitting in corporate America. I also learned that I'm more of a generalist. I like to have a vision and lead people to implement. I'm not as strong as an operational leader. I don't have that attention to detail. In the morning, I have the access to my best thinking and creativity. By the time I hit noon, 1 o'clock, I can execute things that I've planned to do, but I'm just going through the motions at that point. So if I needed to do creative type work, like writing, for example, for the book, it needed to be prioritized in the morning. And especially those outside distractions. I unfortunately learned about myself. I'm kind of a people pleaser when I have a manager. And so if I open my email before I get to my list of must-dos in the morning, I'm going to get dragged into everyone else's priorities for my day and not the priorities that I set for myself. And spoiler alert, people will always have priorities for you because they have different agendas than you do. And so when you don't take this time to slow down and get clear on how many times you're getting pulled left, right, and center, especially in these highly matrix or global organizations that a lot of people participate in, you're going to start to realize that so much of your time is dictated by other people, and there's ways to reclaim that. And I think it's a great quote. I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but from Warren Buffett, it's something to the effect of the only non-renewable asset we have in life is time. And so much of this process is really around slowing down to find those places where you can recapture your discretionary energy. It's your time, it's your energy. You get to spend your budget how you choose to, But just like balancing a checkbook, if you're not looking at the account, it's really easy to overdrain it very quickly. Okay. I'm going to pause for a minute because I've been talking a really long time and just ask if anybody has a question about month 1 before we jump to month 2. Okay, we were super clear, so that's great. All right. For month 2, this is really around taking the information that you've learned about yourself from slowing down and evaluating it to see, what it is, where you want to go from here. So by doing and reflecting on that energy log, doing some work around identifying your own core values, looking at the network that you have in place today, it allows you to help to start creating a mission statement. And by taking those activities down, the goal of this mission statement is to have a concise way to introduce yourself to new people as you're networking. The reason that's important is people in power love to tell people their story of how they got there. Usually they're pretty, if you ask somebody for advice in a senior level position, typically you can get them talking about themselves pretty easily. The challenge is going to be coming in when they come back to you and say, okay, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? And it's so easy to tip back to what you've done and just saying, I want the next level of what I've done. But that makes you pretty average in terms of the conversations that we have. When you can create a mission statement that's inspired by your values and reflects where you shine, it starts to really open up conversations in a more authentic way and helps you build relationships with people in positions that have the ability to create budgets and create roles versus just executing, filling agendas. So I want to share with you a little bit of work I did with a coach for myself. We use the Ikigai framework to do this. For anybody that's familiar with that. And there's some examples in the book. And also you can definitely search the internet for Ikigai as a framework to look at in terms of the concentric circles of, basically what the world needs, what you're great at, what inspires you, and those types of things. So I have one that I have for my personal life, but I also have one for my professional life. And this helps me ground depending on what kind of environment that I'm in. To have really effective networking. And, we always hear that, be ready with your elevator speech. What's your pitch? What do you want? What do you need? This is my 21st century rebranding of that. It's who are you and what are you uniquely here to do in this world? For me, it's to relentlessly advocate for all people's rights to mental and physical health care in order to be able to thrive at work and at home. It's the reason I wrote the book. I wrote the book because I was coming through a situation that was really hard and I didn't know if it was going to work out. And I wanted to reflect some of that and the processes and the steps to take during that journey, because so many things are written in hindsight and kind of like washed over in terms of the human emotions we have as we're going through what we thought was going to work out really, really well for us wasn't a fit anymore. And so when I started this book, I was told that I had not one, but 2 rare diseases. I may have less than 5 years to live. And I would lose my health insurance if I stopped working more than 32 hours a week. It was not great. When I got to the end of that year, nothing magically fixed. I still have some medical issues that I need to manage around. We found more effective treatments, and that 5 years has now been extended to 50 years. But having that moment to reflect and look, it really helped me to hone in on what is the impact and the legacy that I want to leave when I'm done here. We're not going to, and reflecting on 30 years into my career, where can I add unique value now that the world has changed from, being the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed IOE engineer that shows up at General Motors to do time studies on the Cadillac engine line, now to being somebody who is working with medical research hospitals trying to find ways to do secure data exchange to be able to train more AI models for clinical settings to accelerate diagnoses like the rare disease that I have. From a professional example, what does that look like? It means bringing those influential leaders and innovation together to address social justice issues at scale, whether that can be disrupting human trafficking or working to accelerate healthcare and reduce the amount of clinical errors and misdiagnoses that happens globally. It's about making sure that getting the right people in the room that can focus in on some of these key challenges and educating them about the most recent tools that are available to do it in the absolute most efficient way possible. And we've been able to move some of those mountains. An example of that is in the human trafficking space, we were able to build a tech stack that allowed the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which you might be familiar with from, they used to do the pictures of the missing kids on milk cartons. Now you see them on the walls in Walmart and online. And a nonprofit called Thorn, who had a tool that they had built for AI to be able to identify in escort ads which ones were likely human trafficking victims. By integrating some of the more modern techniques in AI, we were able to add image search into their tool that detectives used globally. And we were able to optimize that model with more modern techniques with neural nets to be able to improve the accuracy. So Microsoft had facial recognition technology back in 2016. They were donating it to this nonprofit to bring it in, but it was really not working very well because the accuracy rate was only 75% when the detectives were trying to use it. And when you look at the volume of escort ads that they have to sort through every day, that can be hours and hours of wasted time and false positives. Nobody's going to tolerate that. The reason that we were able to help them to get something that they could implement was because the models weren't working well because of the data they were trained on. They were trained on predominantly adult, male, white faces, but the model was being applied to predominantly female, teenage, diverse faces. Spoiler alert, it didn't work very great. The models got very tricked by bangs, makeup, lighting, all the things. And so we were able to do a different technique where we just looked at nearest neighbors, what the model thought was most similar. And so if you have 50,000 pictures detectives are scrolling through and they're just looking for the needle in the haystack of that child that they're trying to recover, that known missing child, you can imagine how long it takes to be scrolling through page after page after page looking manually. What the AI did for them was it allowed them to just put them in order of most likely match. So almost every single time, if it wasn't the first picture on the list, it had reordered to be at least in the top line. And we were able to accelerate people's workflow by 90% by just reordering the order of the pictures, because they usually only had to look at the top line. It doesn't matter that much when you're only looking at 50 or 100 pictures. But when you're looking at things in the hundreds of thousands on a daily basis, hoping to find that needle in the haystack, it allowed detectives to free up their time to do what they do uniquely well, which is to set up the meat, recover the child, prosecute the offenders, not sit there scrolling. And, we had job shadowed San Francisco SVU for a week, and we knew that that's what was happening. They're Googling, they're going on the websites and they're looking for the right cases. When we implemented this at scale in 2017, we were able to recover an additional 130 children per month that were known human trafficking victims, because no child can voluntarily participate in this industry. So that's an example of, I wanted to do something to benefit women and children in the world that were particularly marginalized. I'm not a social worker. I don't know how to do the front lines. I'm not in law enforcement, but by bringing the influential leaders of tech companies together with AI and showing them that they could do something to reduce the amount of crime happening on their platforms, we were able to invest an additional $4 million into the data centers for NCMEC and be able to accelerate the recovery of children from 30 days to 24 hours. For getting reports to law enforcement from tech companies to law enforcement times back back in 2018 when we went into full production there. So it's important to be able to have some examples of what gets you out of bed in the morning, because it differentiates you from every other, meeting that they have for informal networking. When you know who you are, you can lead and make an impression. And then a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, somebody's going to remember that passion in you about what you're passionate about. It doesn't need to be human trafficking. Let it be the environment. Let it be senior care. Let it be any challenge that you see in the world, hate speech, tolerance, and be able to think through how can you start to implement some of those benefits into the skill sets that you have today as an engineer, as a professional problem solver. Month 3 is really around getting down to brass tacks. We spend a lot of time slowing down, getting in tune with ourselves, getting clear what motivates us, what inspires us, and what legacies that we want to leave. Now it's really important to do the planning. What demands do you need your lifestyle to look like? As a working mom, I know that I don't have as much time as I used to when I was just responsible for myself, for example. Week 10 is really around informational interviews, getting together with different people that you have worked with over time, friends of friends, introductions with people to get more clarity as you're starting to narrow down what your options are, where could be a potential good cultural fit for you. If you're working for someone else, or if you're looking to work for yourself, what can entrepreneurship look like, and where can you learn some of those things? Week 11, I just remind people that negotiation is very important. You never have more negotiating power than the time between when they select you as the candidate and when you start a job. It's a lot easier for companies in many cases to be able to provide you perks like higher pay, bonuses, extra vacation, maybe restricted stock, whatever. During the hiring process, it comes out of a different bucket than once you're in-house and they have to share that amongst, the group every year for promotions. So I just remind everyone, don't accept the first offer. They're not going to rescind an offer because you asked for something else. They may tell you no, that's okay. But don't just say yes, thank you, and go on. And last but not least, week 12, it's really about the persistence game. I'm not saying that the 90-day career cleanse means you have a whole career in 90 days. I'm saying after 3 months, when you spend this time, you will have the tools that you need to know where you want to be going and how to network to get there. Spoiler alert, most of my clients do actually succeed at creating these kinds of opportunities within the time frame, but I don't want anybody to feel like they have to. So in terms of lifestyle goals, here's some examples of some things I'm talking about. I once had a manager that explained it to me this way that I really felt was really helpful for me, which is at every stage in life, you're going to have different dials of your career that you can turn up and turn down. And it's just important to recognize where you are today. So for me, when I was in my 20s, travel was great. I used to travel 100,000 miles a year for a multinational corporation, and they sent me to 36 countries before I turned 30. I couldn't have enjoyed it more if I tried. But now that would be really problematic. Who's going to get my kids to school? And, I had them because I actually want to see them. So where do I set that dial? For me, it's 25% or less travel. That is a hard requirement for me. Are there jobs that I look at that are 50% travel that look awesome? Absolutely. Do I apply for them? Yes, I do. Do I go through the process? Absolutely. But somewhere in that conversation is, I can do 25%. I can't do 50%. And if that's really a firm requirement, I might not be your person. Some of those things have turned into 1099 freelancing opportunities. Maybe I'm not the right fit for that role, but I can bring value to that. And so through that interview process, you can learn a lot more about what challenges that employer is having and where you have skills that might benefit them. It might not turn into a full-time job, but maybe it turns into a contract where you can get your feet wet and get known. And then the next opportunity is earmarked for you because they know you and they feel comfortable with your work. Relocation is really critical. I left corporate America because I knew between my husband's job and my job, if I was going to continue to go up the ladder, it would require moving. And my husband is anchored to this region with the work that he does. And So it's not really realistic that I'm going to continue to move every 3 to 4 years to make that happen right now. When my kids are in college, sure, let's do it. That's only 5 years out. So again, these are things you have to look at on a regular basis, because what served you yesterday might not be where you are today. Skills development, I think, is really important to think through, which is not what skills do you need to develop to be the best candidate for the job that you want, not the job you're applying for now, but the next one. So I knew that I wanted to do board of directors work when I retired. I knew that required me getting a job title of a VP or above in order to be qualified to be board ready. I knew it took some experience and training, learning governance of boards. And so I joined a nonprofit board so that I could get more experience that way. I knew that I had to get a board resume and be able to sharply be able to explain where I'd add value from that perspective. I knew I probably wasn't the compensation committee. I didn't come from a HR background, and I probably wasn't the audit committee. I wasn't a finance or a legal person, but I am a technology person, and I have an AI and cybersecurity background. So tuning in on some of those places and starting to add some of those skill sets that make me board ready were really important in the next job I took. It had to have a certain title in order to make that accessible to me now. It had to fill in some gaps of experience that I didn't have yet in order to make me the right candidate for the next thing. If you only focus on, where you want to be next, you're going to be missing the opportunities to be well prepared for where you want to go. And it's really about being honest about the skills that you have today and the skills that are required for that job 2 jobs out, being able to look at that delta and make sure that the next job that you take is filling some of those gaps. Some examples I've seen of that are people that have maybe left long-term government careers to have a similar lateral move into the private sector to show that they can work effectively in both the private sector and the public sector as a CIO, for example, because they knew that their long-term vision was to be a consultant when they retired. And so they needed that private experience, private sector experience. Or another example of that would be, an engineer that's looking to move to more of a business role and wants to be more of a VP. Well, they probably are going to need to have maybe people management experience in the next role that they take, because they've only done individual contributor roles. And that director level will require them, will give them the experience they need so that when they have the opportunity to maybe add the experience of running a P&L, they already have the experience being managing people. But if they didn't take a role that had people on the team, they wouldn't be considered for that next VP role. So, begin with the end in mind, in the wise words of Stephen Covey. Upward mobility, making sure that there's space for you to grow within a company once you join it. I've seen a lot of people that are mid-career, especially on the technical side, where the job's great, they love it, but after 4 or 5 years, it's very clear that there is no progression for them within the company that they're in. So being able to look at an environment and say, is there places for me to grow when I come in, can be really critical. Because as lifelong learners and curious engineers that we are, we get bored easily if we're stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then last but not least, for me, flexibility is key. If I'm being micromanaged and I have to, it's a button seat culture, I can do it for a while. But, it's really critical for me to be able to own my time. What I find is when I don't have flexible environments that are open to remote work, what goes away is my self-care, my exercise, all the things that I need to do to refill my bucket to be an effective employee, because those are consumed by commuting times and other times that are necessary but not productive for me. So as you're looking at that and where you want to go from here, thinking about where you set those dials for these types of variables can be really helpful in making sure that where you land is a place that you can thrive. So what you may learn in some of these, is maybe you want to work for yourself. If you didn't notice from some of my answers, it's really hard to get an employer to be on board with all the flexibility that I require. So if you want to step out and lead your own company, I was in my 40s before I ever did that. It's really important to look at being able to very clearly explain what your clarity of vision is for your company. You need to stay relentlessly focused on your customers and engaging with them regularly, especially those early customers and beta customers that can help you to co-create your product. If you build exactly what was in your brain when you started your pitch deck, you probably aren't responding to the needs of the market, and you might just be building something because it's a cool trinket. You need to involve your customers and your user base to make sure that you're building for what their priorities are for, or else you might not have a market to sell to, and effectively you've created a hobby. Other things to keep in mind there, you will be your company's brand. You can no longer leverage a logo to open doors. So it's important to be doing some thought leadery things if this is a goal of yours for the future. I can tell you that I started really small with, when I was still working in corporate America, putting up a blog on LinkedIn once a quarter was a huge stretch goal for me. I got a math degree for a reason. Writing doesn't come naturally. But that allowed me to start building a following slowly over time. And, you know, I went from having 300 connections to now over 10,000. And those allowed me to sell my company when it was time to exit. Those allowed me to have opportunities to speak at conferences and other things that wouldn't have come had I not invested the small things early to build the opportunity to continue over time. If you're going to be leading your own company, a word to the warning, you get married to your work. And so wellness practices get really important here because it's really easy to continue to work until burnout, especially when you're the one ultimately responsible for the company. So a lot of the things that I'm telling people to do in the first month of the career cleanse are really things that are very critical to maintain if you're going to be leading an organization. And last but not least, done is better than perfect. If you're going to be out there, if you launch your product when it's perfectly baked and you're super proud of it, you probably launched too late. So there is no room for perfectionism when you're inventing the future. And it's important to push yourself to put things out to start getting the feedback of what people want, need, and value before you start optimizing and perfecting the things that you're building. So in order to be successful in entrepreneurship, you need to think about, you know, do you have the skills to access capital? If you don't, that's okay. I started small with things like taking free classes through the Small Business Association that are free to anybody in the US. It's funded through our tax dollars. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of experience outside of the US accessing that, but you can look at other government programs that are trying to encourage small business growth within your regions. Looking at building your company's brand, even if that's, you know, something as simple as a blog on a public platform, all the way to, you know, going to conferences to network with the right types of people within your industry. And then last but not least, and in my opinion, the most important, discover who those right customers are. When we started our company, Minor Guard, to build software to prevent children from taking explicit images of themselves, which is a felony, we really thought we would be looking at customers in the parent space and just like a business to consumer product. But what we realized as we went through the process of defining what we thought the product could look like was that the technology back in 2018 to use AI to determine age was not cost effective to scale. And so if we really wanted to build a product that's targeted at the under 18 market, we needed to freeze that variable to be able to know ground truth on someone's age. That's obviously personally identifiable information and very private information that as a small company, nobody was going to get me. So we decided to focus in on the K through 12 demographic because we knew that the people using the technology would be children. And that way we could we could tune our product for some of the other variables that were things that we could identify. So by looking into our customer base, it allowed us to recruit different board members than we would have because we didn't think about the K-12 education market as our early customers that gave us access to CIOs through that board member that had worked with that board member for 20 years and implicitly trusted, and allowed us to do some pilots with beta customers in very large school districts, including DeKalb, Georgia, which is a very large school district. If I remember correctly, there was 180,000 students in that district. So we could get really robust data back about whether our products were working and where we needed to tune. So just a reminder, especially if you're running the companies, you really need to think about who are those customers that you're serving and be flexible about changing those if need be to be able to get to the right markets. I'm going to talk a little bit about internship and then we'll wrap up. Entrepreneurship, excuse me. And then we can wrap up with any questions anyone has. But if you're looking to create something new and novel within the company that you work for today, I wanted to give you some tips and tricks for doing that successfully. Building for your mission is the key to innovation. If you are looking to create and sponsor a project like something similar to what we did at Intel with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, it's really important to identify the strategic alignment with your company goals. The annual report is a great place to start for that. So I knew at the time back in 2016 that Intel was really interested in having usable case studies for how AI showcases the power of the computer chips that they were building, but they were in a unique situation that a lot of companies, not a unique situation, a common situation many companies are in, which is you don't have access to your user data in a way to start experimenting and building models. It's too sensitive, it's too private. And so they're going to keep the data in one place. Maybe, for example, we partnered with Google. The Google ads team was not going to be sending over the Google trust and safety team examples of what their customers are doing wrong on the platform. That's not going to happen. There's a separation of that data for a very important cybersecurity reason. But who has a lot of data? The public sector. So by finding an NGO that was looking to solve similar problems, we could showcase the power of the technology, but make it a scalable case study. So by solving the problem from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children of having very private data that's illegal to hold, share, or distribute, and being able to find meaningful information about it without manually looking through the information, is very similar to problems that happen in the banking industry with know your customer requirements for money laundering. It's very similar to the problems you have in national security for radicalization and terrorism. It doesn't take a huge imagination to say, hey, if you can use this to recover victims of crimes faster for this crime, could this apply to cartels or money laundering or other kinds of problematic things that we need to solve with really tricky data? And so that was the way that we were able to help the company invest in this kind of research, this kind of resource. It had a business impact and a return on investment, and it gave them stories that they could use in public forums to showcase innovation. Getting an executive sponsor for your project or vision is really critical. This is somebody who can create budgets, not just spend them. So when we had this vision, I had to recruit a VP that we spent 6 months going and talking to the C-suite of the company together about the vision for this and fundraising to get it executed. So I could not have gone into, I couldn't get the forum with the people that we got without her and her leadership and her stepping in front of it and advocating for it. So I remind people that leveraging your network is going to be critical here. And then last but not least, having external partners that you're testing with in the real world add a lot of credibility to your project. So our external partners in this example were Google, Microsoft, and Intel. Well, those are really important customers for us in addition to being partners on this project. So it strengthens the community and the employee brand and add value to our most strategic customers, which help them to make those investments. And just a little fun fact about this picture. This is from the World AI Festival this year. This is Adam Chavoy, and he is one of the original creators of Surrey. So he sold his company to Apple doing that. And then he created change.org and got that off and running. And now he's a VP of experience at Airbnb. So, and these are all really impactful folks in technology as well, but more on the academic side of things. So it's really cool when you focus in on what you do well. It gets you on stages that in places that you never would imagine. I certainly didn't think when I left Ann Arbor and came to California for the first time that I would ever be in Cannes at the place where they do the film festival, interviewing some of the leaders of AI in the industry. I didn't even though AI was happening when I was in school, I certainly wasn't familiar with it at that time. So I just encourage you all to dream big in terms of your career agility. So in conclusion, it's going to be critical everybody embraces AI to stay competitive and thrive in this digital age. That doesn't mean that you have to go build AI. You just have to be able to use tools that other people build. So I start small with these things. I have a tool that I invest in that helps me write my social media posts. I'm not a marketing expert. I don't know what to do with that. It takes my long form content and videos and makes it digestible and automates some of that for me on the brand side of things. So it's not important to learn how to build it. It is important to learn how to leverage it. Reskilling is going to be required as innovation accelerates the future of work. I think we've seen a lot of impact of work changing over time, especially with the last few years. It's sped up. This is probably the slowest change is going to happen in the workplace going forward. So you have to be ready for it. Subject matter expertise is going to be required for industries to be able to adopt these tools. And you have a huge role to play as a senior leader in the organization and as an engineer on how to integrate those things. So you can really differentiate yourself by being open-minded to the change and helping companies to be successful in implementing these solutions. Most technology projects don't fail because of the tech. They fail because of the adoption and the people. So being a leader in the space can really help you to elevate your leadership skills. And then last but not least, if you like what we talked about here and you'd like to deep dive a little bit more into all the topics that we covered and actual plans about doing it, you can grab my book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or you can go to my website and check it out there. And I think at that, I'm going to pause and open up for questions.
So we do have one question. It's also regarding the mission statement. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Abhinav Sharma. They said, do you have tips on how to make the mission statement specific? For instance, in your mission, you clearly highlight mental and physical health care. And similarly, in your professional statement, you have social justice issues. Are those specific that flow more easily past the initial reflection in month one? I have been giving it some thought recently, and I do find myself primarily looking at my background and looking at a level up from it using your words. Any tips you have will be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so just thinking off the top of my head, I can tell you a couple things here. Number one, I used a more broad term for my professional mission statement because I looked at a reflection of my career history. And when I looked at the places where I'd honed in on, it was primarily public sector, and it could be as, criminal focused as human trafficking, or it was as opposite of that in healthcare reform, right? And being able to use healthcare in more clinical settings. So I went to social justice because I thought about, it's really about making sure that people have the data that they need to advocate and be able to drive systemic change. I knew it needed to be at a scale that it was going to impact more than just a small community of people. And I knew that it had to be something that people could connect with of, oh, I work in healthcare, oh, I work in the government, or oh, I work in nonprofits. This is the kind of person that can help me connect to innovation. So I use kind of that broader term there. On my personal one, I was looking at where did I want to grow to? What was the most important for me at this season of my life? And seeing the impacts, I think a lot of people have heard this term, but I may have lived it in some ways that everyone hasn't, which is if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Health is wealth. And the year that I wrote this book, I was stuck in bed. And so it got really clear to me that, and this kind of happens for me a few times over. It's like, if not me to solve this problem, then who's going to do it? Like I'm a tech executive. I have the background in launching startups. I know the technology stacks, and I've lived with the current system as it is, and it's miserable. I want to be somebody that helps to get us, maybe not build the next tool, but maybe inspire the next generation to disrupt the industry, like Uber disrupted the taxi industry, for example. So I think that that's some of the ways that I work through some of those words. As I mentioned before, and I think Mohammed had mentioned having that framework, there are a lot more details in the book that walk you through this. You just got 4 chapters worth of material and 25 slides. But long and short of it, I did use the Ikigai framework to come up with some of those words. And it was a reflection of the experience that I've had over time, reflected with where I want to go. What will the world pay for? What is a hub? And sort of going through some of those places to find those intersection points. Because if you look at my career, it makes no sense. I've been an IOE, an engineer. I've been a IT manager. I worked in marketing. I've done diversity and inclusion in HR. I've been in sales for 20 years. I've been a CEO for the last 14. Now I'm an author. Like none of it's not like you go step by step by step by step. So when you have more of a generalist background, I think it's important to be able to get it down to a concise amount of words so that people remember you and think of you during a certain topic, because those are the phone calls you get a year from now that are like, okay, we're doing this huge initiative and you are the only person in the world that can do this well. I know you are a perfect fit for this, because they know who you are, and they know where you want to go, and you have the right experience to do it.
Let's see if this works. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. I had trouble before. So I'm Abhinav. I'm the one who asked the question. So thank you for that. And it's funny you bring up the Ikigai framework, because right after I finished my grad school, I actually wrote like a 5-page document just focusing on Ikigai and trying to figure out where to direct my career. If you're open to it, I would love to connect with you a little down the road once I go through all of my reflection sessions, because I'm reaching a little bit of an influx point where I am, and I want to explore what's available. I think
I would be very open to that. At this season of my career, I'm pretty much retired and just teaching for U of M.
Okay.
Not just, but I'm teaching with U of M for professional development, and working with you guys to accelerate your visions of where you can make an impact in the world accomplishes my mission statement, because I'm not going to be the doer anymore. So I'd be more than happy to do that, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. We'll find some time.
That would be great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've answered the questions in the chat. If anybody wants to hang out to answer something in a more, smaller group, they're welcome to do that. But otherwise, I think it's okay to wrap up a few minutes early. What do you think?
Yep, sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. It was so nice that you joined us today, and this was really meaningful to me too.